briefly to provide a little bit of understanding of kind of the data analysis that we did. I want to preface that with, I wish there was an easy way to go about getting this data, but about as many different ways that you can possibly do this, that's how it's being done in schools. There are no standard classes, categories, no standard minimum number of hours, no blocks of time. Not every district rents the same types of facilities that we have available. Not all of them do it in the same manner. So it's a very difficult data to try to collect and then come up with some sort of consistency among the districts. But we did attempt such a comparative piece, and reflecting on that, what we did is we looked at the frequency, the number of districts renting similar types of facilities. We looked at the lows, the high, the average. We also took a look at where the previous Lake Forest rates fell in comparison to this new data analysis, and pretty consistently across the board, with a few exceptions, we were extremely high, meaning like off the charts as far as our hourly rates for our facilities. What we attempted to do in the recommendation before you today is to kind of come out somewhere closer to the average, but we're probably still in the higher end of the low to high. We left a little bit of room, I think, within those rental categories, because this is a new attempt. I mean, this is a significant decrease in a lot of categories over our previous rates, but it's also the first time we've come at it this way. So we will review these rates probably on an annual basis, or at least at some future date, but we did try to keep somewhat of a set system in comparing them. In a couple of the cases, there were no comparisons. There were no published facility rental rates for soccer fields, yet we rent our soccer fields and have people that are interested in using our soccer fields. So what we then tried to do is look at our fields in comparison to our other fields that might have comparative data available. So kind of try to look at a soccer field compared to a baseball field, and how much maintenance is involved in each, and those type of things. So there is a little bit of gray, but as much data analysis that we could do, we did make a very significant attempt to do.
I think one thing that bears repeating is, as Jennifer said, that our rates were so high. As we began reviewing this information last winter, almost all of us involved felt that the policy stated one thing, that being that the facility should be available for use when not needed for school activities, but that the rate schedules were so cost prohibitive that they discouraged use. So based on some of the benchmarking and comparisons that they've done, we tried to set the rates. If we're erring, we still feel we're on the high end compared to other schools, but we think the rate structure is now much more in line with the intent of the policy, at least what we're recommending. Now there are two specific arrangements that we have that were difficult to quantify. As Jennifer said, with soccer fields, there's not a lot of comparative data. And what's evolved with AYSO over time is a per student charge and then in-kind services. AYSO takes care of all the goals, the maintenance of the goals, and buying of replacement goals on an annual cycle. So the way we got to our figures that are in the recommendation tonight is we tried to quantify what that means annually on a dollar amount. And then divide that back by the number of participants and come up with an hourly rate for the field charge. In doing so, we added in some expenses because we assume that we will be picking up now the cost of the goals. So if we're going to make this more transparent, more black and white, it's just a straight facility charge for the field. We'll monitor that during the year, but the goal would be we'll generate a little more revenue than we have now, but we're going to have an expense, which will be the maintenance of the goals. And the goal was to be fairly neutral to us and both AYSO. In regard to the tennis program, our agreement with College Park has included in-kind services of College Park resurfacing the courts, providing indoor court access at no charge, and I believe contributions for nets or setting up windscreens and some other ancillary type things. Again, we tried to place a value on that and then work backwards into what would that be on a per court usage, and then factor in that we would not expect any in-kind or free court time going forward. If we use indoor courts, then we would be paying for them. That goes back to some of the community input about just make it very transparent, very clear. One last item is that during the community input, it was suggested in regard to the tennis program that we develop an in-house tennis program as a revenue source. While that could be feasible, we could only do so after a considerable amount of discussion and assessment of resource allocations, as we already run many programs during the summer. And if we venture, we would be venturing into services normally provided by the Recreation Department. Consequently, at this time, we're not prepared to make such a recommendation, but I wanted to at least acknowledge we did hear that, we did discuss it, we did talk about that. In regard to the existing in-kind services agreements, once rate schedules are established, we will work to rescind those agreements to, number one, be consistent with the policy and the fee schedule that's in front of you tonight and make it more transparent, and also, on our end, make it easier to administer. So in summary, we began reviewing the administrative procedures and rate schedules last winter. We collected community input after a concern was raised regarding an existing in-kind services agreement with College Park. From that input, as well as our operations committee discussion, data collection, legal counsel input, and risk management input, staff has revised the administrative procedures and developed new rate schedules that are before you tonight. Tonight we are requesting approval of the facility rate schedules and personnel schedules as contained within your packet. And unless you have questions for me, I have some homework to go do.
I do have one question.
Yes.
Is the Class 3 community service activities and organizations, are those within the boundaries of District 115, or is that open to any community service agency from anywhere?
I'm going to say my interpretation is it's open because part of our discussion was even though the group may not be housed in Lake Forest or Knollwood, they may service parts of this community.
Okay.
Yeah, it was intended to be open to
United Way or Red Cross, or
and if they wish to have their activity here, it's because they feel it's of interest or value to our community.
Now, as far as discretionary, is there anything discretionary about the value of the activity to the community? Or does first come, first served mean whoever knocks on the door first?
For open times, it's first come, first served. And then once a group comes in, if they comply, they're a good tenant, they comply with our policies and procedures, they have the right to continue renewing that. And again, we're putting that in writing now, but that has been our past and current practice. When somebody calls up, I wish Tim were here because he knows the dates more than I do, but when they have a spooktacular event, that's pretty much earmarked. And when another group calls, then that's checked with them first to make sure that they're still going forward and utilizing those dates.
For up to 3 years in advance. The goal, I think, of the staff and the operations committee was trying to assist them in this, was to develop a set of procedures that would work for all different scenarios, which is very difficult. On our operations committee and among the staff, we had people who had firsthand knowledge of a lot of the different activities and organizations that use our facilities, and that was very helpful. Sharon was in on a lot of those meetings, and she had knowledge of organizations that use the facilities, and we really tried to look at all the different scenarios so that everybody is on a level playing field, so to speak, and kind of all coming from the same place. Everybody's going to be treated in the same way. These procedures are written in a way that we hope and think that they can apply to anybody. As Alan or Jennifer pointed out, they may need to be tweaked a little bit over the, after we go through this for a year and see how things are working out. But the intention is this is a clear and transparent policy that will apply to all different categories of facilities use.